The night air tasted like metal and exhaust. Streetlights bled pale gold across cracked concrete, catching the slow drip of blood from the man's split lip. Tyrone Hayes kept his hands spread flat against the cold hood of the police cruiser, breath steady, eyes fixed on the windshield's reflection. The red and blue lights burned against the wet pavement, sirens off, silence more dangerous than noise. Officer Grayson leaned in close. His breath was sour with burnt coffee and the certainty of power. "Should have stayed in your lane," he said, voice low, controlled. The baton in his right hand tapped the hood in a steady rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. Tyrone's pulse synced with the sound. His suit jacket hung torn at the shoulder. His briefcase lay crushed in the gutter, classified documents scattering like dead leaves. A phone camera across the street glowed. No one spoke. No one intervened. Grayson pressed his knee harder into the back of Tyrone's thigh. "People like you," he hissed, "always think you're untouchable." The snap of the cuff echoed down the empty street. Tyrone tasted blood. His jaw locked around the scream building at the base of his throat. Inside his pocket, beneath the officer's weight, a thin leather wallet pressed against his ribs, an ID card carrying the seal of the Central Intelligence Agency. The officer didn't know. Not yet. The phone across the street kept recording. The crowd kept breathing. Tyrone kept counting the beats of the baton. Tap, tap, tap. Then the radio on Grayson's shoulder crackled with a voice Tyrone recognized. Tyrone stepped out of the town car, briefcase in hand, night air pressing against his skin like damp cloth. The street was half lit, one street lamp flickering, throwing jagged shadows across the cracked pavement. He wore a dark suit, tie loose. From a long day, the faint scent of old bourbon and printer ink clinging to his sleeves. The cruiser slid in fast, cutting the corner like a predator circling prey. Red and blue light splashed against the wall. "Hands on the hood," Officer Grayson barked before Tyrone even registered the door slam. "I haven't—" "Hands on the hood," Tyrone obeyed. The metal burned cold against his palms. Another officer circled behind him. Grayson's flashlight beam slashed across Tyrone's back, catching on the briefcase at his feet. "What's in the case?" "Work," Tyrone said. "Yeah, sure, work." Grayson's laugh was a knife scraping glass. "You think a suit makes you clean?" Tyrone's jaw tightened. The baton tapped the hood. Slow, deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. Cars slowed, then kept moving. Two people stood on the sidewalk, phones angled, silent witnesses. "Where's your ID?" "In my inside pocket." "Don't move," Grayson snapped. He reached in, ripped Tyrone's jacket open, yanked the wallet free. The leather thudded against the hood. The other officer kicked the briefcase. Latches popped. Documents scattered into the gutter. "You got a lot of secrets here," Grayson muttered, kicking one paper toward the curb. Tyrone kept his breathing steady. "Run him," Grayson said. Radio static. A faint, confused voice returned. "No priors. Clean," Grayson smirked. "Well, that's about to change." The baton struck the back of Tyrone's leg. He stumbled but didn't break stance. "Sir, shut up," Grayson snapped, leaning closer, voice low. "People like you always think the rules don't apply." The cuff snapped around Tyrone's wrists. Cold metal bit into skin. A woman across the street whispered, "Oh my God." The cruiser door swung open. Tyrone's briefcase lay crushed against the curb. Inside his jacket, pressed against his ribs, the ID card still sat where Grayson hadn't checked. As Grayson shoved him toward the car, Tyrone's eyes met the phone camera. A silent record. No words. Just the sound of boots on wet pavement and the baton's final tap against metal. Tap, tap, tap. The city held its breath. Then the radio crackled. A voice Tyrone knew. A chill sliced through the night. The fluorescent lights inside the precinct hummed with a dull, sterile rhythm. Concrete floors smelled of bleach and cold steel. Tyrone stood between two fingerprint-smeared desks, cuffs still tight. His jacket hung ripped at the shoulder. Grayson leaned against the booking counter, smirking. "Suit and tie in our house. What's next? A Harvard diploma?" Laughter drifted from the other officers. Not loud, just enough to sting. "Strip him," one of them said. The glove snapped. Tyrone kept his head still. The search was methodical and degrading, performed like routine theater. His shoes scraped against the floor as they forced him to spread his arms. "You people always dress up to hide what you are," Grayson muttered, checking the wallet again. He still hadn't seen the sealed compartment. "I have the right to a lawyer," Tyrone said. Grayson's reply was a barked laugh. "You got the right to breathe. For now." An older officer walked by, glanced once, and kept moving. No interruption, no objection, just institutional silence, polished and practiced. They dragged Tyrone into a gray interrogation room with a single buzzing light overhead. A camera blinked red in the corner. Grayson took the chair opposite him. A second officer leaned against the wall, chewing gum. "So tell me," Grayson said, tapping a pen against a form, "what's a man like you doing in my streets at night?" "Going home," Tyrone replied. Wrong answer. The pen clicked. Paper shuffled. The officer at the wall chuckled. "You got any idea how bad this can get?" Grayson's tone dropped lower. "All I gotta do is say you reached for something." Tyrone stared back, silent. The gum chewer spoke. "This one's quiet. Thinks he's smarter than us." "Let him be," Grayson said. "We'll see how long that lasts." The door opened. A sergeant stuck his head in. "Wrap it up. Captain wants the room cleared in 10. "Why?" Grayson snapped. "Phone call. Higher up." Grayson's smirk faltered for the first time. "Higher up who?" "Didn't say. Just clear it." The door shut. Silence spread. Tyrone kept his eyes fixed on the pen tapping the table. Tap, tap, tap. Grayson leaned closer. "Whatever you think is coming to save you, it isn't." The intercom cracked. "Sergeant, transfer the detainee. He's flagged." Grayson straightened. "Flagged how?" "Just move him." The gum chewer spat into the trash. The tone in the room shifted, not respect, but calculation. Grayson grabbed Tyrone by the arm and hauled him up. His grip was harder now, less casual. As they marched down the hallway, the captain's door opened. A man in a dark suit stood inside, holding a folder marked "Classified." His eyes didn't move toward Grayson, only toward Tyrone. "Put him in room 3, the captain said, voice tight, controlled. Grayson's jaw flexed. "What the hell is this?" "Orders." The hallway lights buzzed overhead. Tyrone didn't speak. He didn't need to. The shift had begun. Grayson just didn't understand it yet. Room 3 was colder than the others. No humming light, just a clean overhead strip, silent and bright. Tyrone sat cuffed to a bolted chair. The walls were painted in bureaucratic beige, the kind designed to feel neutral and end up suffocating. The door opened with a quiet click. A man in a dark federal suit stepped in. He carried a slim folder tucked under his arm and didn't look at Tyrone the way the officers had. His gaze was sharp, clinical. Behind him, Captain Rourke hovered like a shadow, face drawn tight. Grayson stood near the door, hands on his belt, mask of control cracked at the edges. "Remove the cuffs," the suited man said. His voice was calm, absolute. Grayson hesitated. "Sir, this detainee, remove them." The metal clinked as the cuffs came off. Grayson's jaw tightened. Tyrone flexed his wrists once, slow. The suited man placed the folder on the table. He flipped it open. Inside, under the harsh light, a single identification card gleamed. Grayson froze. "What the hell is that?" The captain's silence answered for him. Tyrone didn't speak. He let the weight of the badge do it. "Special Operations Clearance," the suited man said. "Central Intelligence Agency." Grayson's face went blank. Then color drained from it. "This is a joke." "No," the captain said, voice low. "It isn't." The suited man turned a page. "You made an arrest without probable cause. You used force. You failed to run the full ID check. And now you're standing in front of a federal operative with clearance levels you can't pronounce." Grayson's hand twitched toward his belt. Not aggression. Reflex. "You assaulted a federal agent," the suited man continued. "On camera." The captain cleared his throat. "We can manage this." "No, you can't," the suited man cut him off. "Internal affairs, federal oversight, this isn't yours anymore." The words hit like a gavel. Tyrone leaned back slightly. The room felt different now, not safer, but shifted. Power had moved across the table without sound. Grayson forced out a dry laugh. So what? You people cover for your own, we cover for ours, same game. The suited man's stare didn't move. Not this time. A knock at the door. Another officer leaned in, whispering to the captain. The captain's face stiffened. News cameras are outside, he muttered. Grayson's laugh died in his throat. The suited man closed the folder. Agent Hayes is leaving, you're staying. Grayson stepped forward. I'm not. Two internal affairs officers appeared behind him, hands resting lightly on their holsters. Not a threat, a statement. The captain lowered his head. Do what they say, Grayson. Tyrone stood. His movements were slow, measured, surgical. He adjusted his torn jacket. Grayson stared at him, voice cracking under his breath. You set me up. Tyrone met his eyes once. Calm, silent, final. Then he walked out of room 3. Grayson was left standing in the same room he once controlled, staring at the badge that turned him small. The first fracture in the wall had been made. By dawn, the incident had spread beyond the precinct walls. The building smelled of burnt coffee and quiet panic. Tyrone sat in a federal transport car outside, watching uniformed officers scurry between doors like ants under a magnifying glass. The air around the precinct was no longer thick with arrogance. It was thick with containment. Inside, Captain Rourke slammed his palm on a desk. Where's the body cam footage? A younger officer stammered. Sir, it's not in the system. It was there last night. Yes, sir. And now it's gone. Grayson stood in the corner of the room, pale, eyes hollow. He'd been stripped of his patrol gear, left in undershirt and bruised ego. His hands twitched at his sides. You're acting like this is over something big. The captain didn't look at him. It is. In another office, 2 lawyers from the agency spread documents across a table, legal pads filled with timestamps, chain of custody notes, and phone call logs. One of them spoke without looking up. This isn't staying quiet. A PR officer from the department pushed back. We can control the narrative, he resisted standard stop. The lawyer's voice sliced through the room. There's a civilian recording. Silence settled heavy. Down the hall, Tyrone's personal attorney arrived. She wore a charcoal suit and carried a recorder already running. Agent Hayes is invoking full disclosure protocols, she said. Her tone was flat, precise, deadly. Rourke appeared in the doorway. We're cooperating, he said, the lie barely holding shape. She didn't bother responding. Grayson was dragged into an internal review room. 4 chairs, 1 table, no shield of authority left. 2 IA officers sat across from him. Where's your footage? One asked. I don't know. Wrong answer. It's gone. I didn't touch it. The officer leaned forward. Then someone did. Grayson stared at the tabletop. His voice shrank. This isn't how it's supposed to go. Outside, Tyrone watched the sunrise bleed over the street where it began. He didn't smile. He didn't relax. He just watched the city wake up to the story that was about to consume it. A notification buzzed on his phone. An online post. Black man assaulted by cop, he's CIA. The video had leaked, comment sections flooded with outrage, denial, defense, and fury. Hashtags rose. News vans parked outside the precinct like vultures waiting for a heartbeat to stop. Inside, Grayson's voice cracked in the review room. You can't let them do this to me. I've got a union. The IA officer didn't blink. They've got the world. The department's PR team drafted statements built on precision and hollow phrasing. We are conducting a full investigation. We value transparency. We take this matter seriously. Every line meant nothing. Every word came too late. The paper trail was no longer theirs to shape. It had already left the building. By midday, Tyrone's name wasn't just trending, it was everywhere. News anchors spoke it with practiced gravity. Their voices smooth, their eyes rehearsed. B-roll footage looped. The shaky phone video of the stop. The baton tapping the hood. The cuffs locking, network chyron. Police officer detains CIA operative in racial profiling incident. Inside a federal safe house, Tyrone sat in a dim room with a muted television. His attorney paced slowly, papers in hand. A government liaison leaned against the wall, arms crossed, face carved from stone. "They're calling it excessive force," the liaison said. "It'll burn hot for a week, then fade." "That's how this works." Tyrone didn't respond. His fingers traced the bruising on his wrists, purple lines where the cuffs had dug in. His attorney stopped pacing. "It won't fade." "Everything fades," the liaison muttered. Across town, a press conference unfolded. Captain Rourke stood at the podium, reading lines he didn't write. "The department is committed to a transparent investigation. We respect all individuals regardless of race or background." Reporters shouted questions he ignored. A screen behind him flashed a sanitized timeline. Routine stop. Brief detainment, incident under review. The language stripped every ounce of violence out of the truth. In the shadows of the crowd, protesters held handmade signs. "Say his name." "This is not an accident." Grayson watched the coverage from his kitchen. His uniform hung crumpled on a chair. Union lawyers sat at his table, one typing rapidly, another scrolling through headlines. "They're coming for me," Grayson said. "They'll come for the department first," the older lawyer replied. "We'll wrap this in procedure. You followed protocol. We'll bury the personal angle." Grayson's hands shook. "He's CIA." "Doesn't matter," the lawyer said. "Protocol's our shield." But even as he spoke, his phone vibrated with another alert. Footage reaches 12 million views. In the safe house, the agency director's voice came through the speaker. "Agent Hayes, you will not make any statements without clearance. National security interests override personal matters. You understand?" Tyrone stared at the blank TV screen. His attorney replied for him. "He's a citizen before he's your operative." The line went silent. Outside, a crowd swelled near the courthouse. Chants rolled through the air, low, steady, building. Tyrone stood, stepped to the window, and watched the world close in. He didn't want it. He didn't seek it. But it was here. Grayson's name was leaking next. The narrative was no longer departmental. It was national. There was no controlling it now. The union's press conference hit the airwaves before noon. Grayson sat at the edge of the stage, hands folded, face scrubbed of emotion. Behind him, a blue banner read, "Police protect police." The union spokesperson leaned into the mic. "Officer Grayson followed procedure during a lawful stop. This incident is being exploited by political interests. We stand behind our officer." Applause from uniformed colleagues filled the hall. Cameras flashed like small explosions. Outside, protesters lined the barricades, holding signs above their heads. The chants were no longer contained. They cut through the air like blades. No justice, no peace. Accountability now. Tyrone walked down the courthouse hallway, flanked by his attorney and two silent federal escorts. Every step was heavy with the sound of reporters hammering at the glass doors outside. "You're under surveillance now," his attorney said. "They've been circling your building. Drones, cars, men with long lenses." "I know," Tyrone said. A reporter's voice carried from outside the door. "Agent Hayes, do you plan to testify? Are you filing suit?" He kept walking. No answers. No permission to speak yet. Down the block, Grayson sat in a black SUV watching the courthouse entrance. His jaw worked side to side like a clenched fist. His lawyer spoke beside him. "Stay quiet. Public sympathy is tilting. Don't give them a villain." Grayson's eyes never left the door. "I'm already the villain." That night, the pressure sharpened. Online doxing began. Grayson's address leaked. Tyrone's family was contacted by reporters. Supporters and detractors flooded inboxes, timelines, comment sections. The case had become a battlefield. Inside a federal conference room, an agency official spoke in clipped tones. "You need to stop feeding the narrative. You're a tool they'll burn when they're done." Tyrone sat still. His attorney said, "He's not a tool. He's a man who was assaulted by your country's front line of power." The official didn't flinch. "And he's also our asset." "Which means he plays by our rules." Tyrone's gaze didn't shift. "No, not anymore." Silence cracked through the room. Later, in the courthouse hallway, Grayson and Tyrone crossed paths for the first time since the night of the stop. Grayson leaned against the wall, flanked by two union reps. His voice came out low, quiet enough to cut through the noise without being heard by others. "You think they'll save you?" Tyrone stopped. His eyes met Grayson's. "I don't need saving," Grayson smirked. "You're not the hero. I'm not the villain." This is just what happens. You'll get tired. I won't, Tyrone stepped closer. You already lost the moment you opened your mouth that night. The smirk flickered. An officer appeared at the end of the hallway. Both of you. Rooms now? Tyrone walked past him without looking back. Grayson's breath hung tight in his chest. The protest outside grew louder. The system had drawn its battle lines. The hearing chamber was lined with polished wood, cameras mounted like watchful eyes. Rows of reporters, activists, and officials filled the seats, the air thick with the weight of a national spectacle. The oversight committee sat at the elevated bench, microphones waiting like blades. Tyrone walked to the witness table. He wore a plain black suit, no tie, bruises on his wrists still faint but visible. His attorney placed a single folder in front of him. Evidence and testimony boiled down to pages that could either fracture a system or feed it. The chairwoman struck the gavel. This committee is now in session. The first question came wrapped in legal language. Agent Hayes described the nature of the encounter on the night of June 14th. Tyrone leaned toward the mic. It wasn't an encounter. It was an assault. The room held still. Every word he spoke landed with precision. They stopped me without cause. They searched me without consent. They struck me without provocation. Then they tried to erase the record of it. Grayson sat at the defense table, uniform pressed, jaw locked. His union lawyer whispered something in his ear. His face didn't move. A senator cleared his throat. Were you targeted because of your race? Yes. How can you be certain? Tyrone didn't blink. Because I've lived in this country long enough to recognize the tone in a man's voice when he's already decided what I am. Murmurs rippled through the room. Cameras zoomed in. Grayson's lawyer rose. Objection, this is subjective. The chairwoman cut him off. Overruled, continue. Tyrone spoke without raising his voice. He described the stop, the baton, the silence of the bystanders, the disappearance of the footage, the immediate shift when his CIA badge surfaced. Each line was exact, unembellished, surgical. On the projection screen behind him, still frames from the leaked video appeared one by one. Flash. Tyrone on the hood. Flash. Grayson's, knee pressing down. Flash. The cuffs. The room tightened. Grayson's. Lawyer began the cross-examination. Agent Hayes, isn't it true that your status as an operative gave this incident outsized visibility? Yes. And without that status, this would have been a routine stop? Tyrone's answer was cold. Without my status, I'd be another headline that disappears in 24 hours. Silence. No senator moved. The chairwoman leaned forward. Officer Grayson, approach. Grayson stood. His boots echoed against the floor. He approached the microphone with the stiffness of someone cornered. Did you know who Mr. Hayes was that night? No. Would it have changed your behavior? His eyes flicked to Tyrone, then away. No. You're under oath, the chairwoman said. Grayson hesitated. One beat too long. The cameras caught it. The union lawyer squeezed his arm. Grayson exhaled through his teeth. Yes, it would have changed everything. The gallery erupted. Reporters shouted over one another. The chairwoman's gavel slammed down. Order. Tyrone sat still. He didn't smile. He didn't move. The mask had cracked. The nation had just watched it happen. The hearing recessed. Protesters outside roared as the doors opened. Grayson lowered his head as he was escorted out a side door, sweat darkening his collar. Tyrone stepped out into the sunlight. The chants were louder now, pulsing through the air like a second heartbeat. The system had been forced to hear him, but it hadn't paid its price yet. The first leak hit at 2:13 a.m. A PDF. Internal complaint logs. Disciplinary records, IA reports buried for years. Grayson's name appeared again and again. Use of force. Civilian complaints. Suppressed evidence. Settlements sealed under no admission of wrongdoing. By sunrise, the file was everywhere. Journalists tore through it like sharks tasting blood. Anchors read excerpts live on air. Hashtags detonated across timelines. Tyrone sat in a quiet room watching the news scroll silently across a muted television. He didn't need volume. The crawl at the bottom said enough. Department records leaked. Years of abuse exposed. The city moved differently that morning. Protesters gathered before dawn. City Hall steps flooded with people holding signs, not just with his name, but with dozens of others. Faces, dates, places, a pattern laid bare. Inside the precinct, Captain Rourke slammed the leaked document onto the table. This was supposed to stay sealed. An IA officer stared at him. It shouldn't have been sealed at all. Grayson sat in a corner chair, pale, shoulders hunched. His lawyer whispered urgently, voice rising just enough to betray panic. "They'll tear the department apart for this," Rourke muttered. The IA officer's tone was flat. "They already are." Across town, the mayor held a press conference. Words like deeply troubling, comprehensive review, and systemic accountability were repeated with rehearsed precision. No apologies, no ownership, just careful distance. Tyrone's attorney walked into the room holding a printed copy of the leak. Every complaint against him, every cover-up. "It's all here." Tyrone's voice was quiet. "They'll try to blame one man." She nodded. "They always do." That night, an emergency city council meeting turned into a live broadcast spectacle. Officials scrambled to control fallout, citing rogue officers and isolated incidents. The crowd in the gallery laughed bitterly. When Grayson was escorted in for his disciplinary hearing, flashbulbs hit him like gunfire. Protesters outside chanted his name, not in defense, but as a symbol of everything rotten beneath the surface. "Officer Grayson," the Internal Affairs chair said, "you are facing termination, decertification, and referral to federal prosecution." Grayson's voice came out cracked. "I didn't act alone." The room stilled. He looked at Rourke. "You told me to keep the footage buried. You said the union would protect me. You said this is how we survive." The chair leaned forward. "Are you admitting departmental involvement?" Grayson's breathing hitched. His lawyer whispered frantically, but it was too late. Tyrone stood at the back of the room, unseen but listening. Grayson's next words dropped like a blade. "You want someone to burn? Fine, but I'm not burning alone." Outside, reporters relayed it live. The system wasn't just cracked anymore. It was bleeding in public. Tyrone stepped out into the cold air. The sound of chanting rolled through the streets like a storm building speed. His name was no longer the story. The machine behind it was. The first badge had fallen. The rest were shaking. The courtroom was silent as the judge read the charges. Grayson stood at the defense table in a county-issued suit, face hollow, eyes sunk deep. The same hands that once rested on a baton now clutched the edge of the table, like a man gripping a ledge. Count 1, deprivation of rights under color of law. Count 2, obstruction of justice. Count 3, falsification of evidence. The words hit like measured flows. Tyrone sat in the gallery, expression flat. He didn't need vengeance. Watching the weight of the law turn on its own enforcer was enough. The prosecutor laid out the case. No grand speeches. Just a slow, steady pile of evidence. Video, internal memos, sealed complaints, union communications. Every piece another nail in the coffin Grayson had built for himself. The defense tried to frame him as a scapegoat. The system trained him. The system encouraged this behavior. He's not a monster. He's a product. The prosecutor's reply was stripped of sentiment. A product can still choose where to aim the gun. The jury didn't flinch. Outside the courthouse, barricades separated two crowds. Protesters demanding reform on one side, thin blue line flags on the other. Their chants collided in the cold air like two storms. Inside, Captain Rourke sat 3 rows behind the defense, jaw locked. His name was in the leaked emails too. He knew what was coming next. The verdict arrived fast. Guilty on all counts. Grayson didn't speak when the judge asked if he had anything to say. His silence was the only honest thing left in him. He was let out in cuffs. Cameras flashed. Protesters roared. A career built on control ended with chains around his wrists. Later that evening, Tyrone stood at a small press podium outside the courthouse. He didn't speak in sound bites. He didn't perform. "I wasn't the first," he said. "I won't be the last. But you all saw it. Now you can't pretend you didn't." His attorney stood behind him. Reporters leaned forward. Inside City Hall, resignation letters began circulating. The mayor's office issued statements about deep reform. Union officials ducked calls. Rourke was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Tyrone walked away from the microphones. The crowd shouted his name. He didn't turn around. That night at the agency, the director waited in a dark office. "You could have kept quiet," the man said. "We could have protected you." Tyrone stared back. "I wasn't looking for protection. You burned bridges you can't rebuild." then let them burn. He slid his badge across the desk and left the room. No cheers. No triumph. Just the sound of a man stepping out of one machine after exposing another. The city moved on, but nothing was clean. The institution had cracked wide open. The cost had already been paid in bruises, silence, and blood. Grayson was behind bars. Rourke was next, and Tyrone Hayes was done being someone else's shield. The city returned to its rhythm like a wound closing over scar tissue. Not healed, just no longer bleeding in public. Billboards once plastered with campaign slogans now carried slogans about accountability. News cycles shifted, but the footage of Grayson on the pavement the night everything fractured had already carved itself into the nation's bloodstream. Tyrone lived in a quiet neighborhood now. No official post, no badge, no agency clearance. A small house with white siding and creaking floorboards. He woke at 4 a.m. out of habit, but there was no mission briefing. Only the hollow echo of routine stripped of purpose. The television flickered without sound. A congressional hearing played. Rourke was on the screen, jaw clenched, flanked by lawyers. Words like institutional accountability, systemic failures, and culture of impunity rolled across the captions. No apology, just language calibrated to contain fallout. Tyrone muted the set completely. The silence was cleaner than their words. Outside, neighbors passed by with cautious glances. Not hostility, just distance. He was a headline to them now. A symbol, not a man. The doorbell rang. His attorney stood on the porch with a folder. No press. "No fanfare, it's official," she said, handing him the envelope. Federal Oversight Committee, Independent Review Board, criminal referrals. They're moving. He read the letter once. Nothing in it felt like victory. "Your name's not in the filings anymore," she added. "You're clear." Tyrone set the letter on the table without looking at it again. Downtown, the old precinct was boarded up. A new sign read, "Under federal control." The union office was under audit. Retirements, suspensions, and indictments stacked in rows. They would call it reform. He knew it was just containment dressed as progress. That night, the protest line stretched through the city like a living pulse. Not just about him, about the faces that never made the news. The names buried in sealed reports. The people who didn't survive to see an indictment. Tyrone walked past the crowd without announcing himself. No cameras followed. No chance carried his name. He preferred it that way. The story didn't belong to him anymore. Under the cold streetlights, a young boy held a sign too big for his hands. It read, "We remember their names." Tyrone stared for a moment, then kept walking. The movement didn't need a hero. It needed to keep breathing when the headlines moved on. Grayson sat in a federal cell hundreds of miles away. Rourke faced his own hearings. The city's institutions convulsed under scrutiny but did not collapse. Systems rarely did. They adapted. Tyrone stood on a bridge overlooking the city. Cars passed beneath like veins feeding a restless body. The wind carried the distant sound of chants. He didn't join. He didn't lead. He simply listened. The world had shifted. Barely, imperfectly, but it had shifted. The machine wasn't invincible anymore. He turned and walked into the dark, alone but unbroken. The story had already moved beyond him. That was the point.